All right, this is writing series part 2, writing the KEATEAL, specifically for informational expository essay. So during this little tutorial, I'm going to go through how you write a KEATEAL step by step so that it's as easy as I can make it, and I'm going to be using our essay from the Odyssey as a sample for this. So basically, we've already talked about the plan and how to pull the plan together. We talked about that in the last installment, and we said that our key idea was going to be made up of a lesson that we wanted to use. So let's just say that my key idea is based upon the lesson of temptation, right? So lesson on temptation. So let me just go ahead and pull that up so we can look at it. See, this is 10th grade. I don't need that one, I need the other one. Well, let's just say that it was temptation. And with temptation, I have to state somehow that it ties into my overall plan. So my prompt answer in my plan said the journeys of others affect us by teaching lessons about life. So to start my key idea, the first thing I want to do is I want to begin with a transition to let my reader know that I'm starting that first body. Okay, so an easy one to use, and we'll use it here today, even though it may be a little bit basic, is first of all, it's just a way to let the reader know that I'm beginning the process of pulling this essay together. So first of all, the first thing I want to do is I want to include the information from my prompt answer, which is basically the core of my thesis, and that's about journeys. So first of all, the journeys of others teach us important lessons like, and at this point I want to pull from whatever I had in my K1 box on my plan sheet. So whatever I had in my K1 box is the lesson that I want to focus on for that paragraph. So in this case, it's going to be about temptation. So first of all, the journeys of others teach us important lessons like, or how about we just go, such as, you know what, I'm making decisions. First of all, the journeys of others teach us important decisions like that temptation is always present in life, but can be avoided with proper preparation. Okay. So first of all, the journeys of others teach us important lessons like that temptation is always present in life, but can be avoided with proper preparation. So the way I want you to think about this K sentence, which again is my key idea sentence of my KEATEAL, is that I'm borrowing from two different places. The first place I'm borrowing is from my prompt answer of my plan. So it would be useful for you right now to be looking at your plan while you're looking at this. So I'm highlighting this just to let you know this is pulled from my prompt answer. And then the second part right here, like that temptation is always present, but can be avoided with proper preparation. This is pulling from my K1 box. So plan in that yellow-ish highlight, and then K1 in that bluish highlight. So those two things in combination make a proper K1 sentence or a proper key idea sentence of KEATEAL. I always want to remind my reader of what the overall purpose is in the essay so that they understand that each point that I make is not just random or being pulled out of the air. For example, I wouldn't want, just to give you an example of what this wouldn't be, I wouldn't want to say, you know, first of all, temptation. See, that would be really bad for me. I don't want to have first of all temptation, because my reader doesn't know why temptation is important, nor what it connects to, or what I'm even trying to say about temptation. I've just given them a topic, and that's not really good enough. So I'm just going to go back here and undo. Okay, so the key idea again is first of all, and then I'm going to say the journeys of others teach us important lessons like that temptation is always present in life but can be avoided with proper preparation. All right, so that's my K. Now once I have my K done, I am ready for my E. And E, and I'll just go ahead and write it this way. I'll write E1. So E1 is basically the first piece of evidence that I'm going to pull. And in this case, if you follow along in the plan video segment that I talked about earlier, you would know that E1 is going to be pulled from the movie. So because this is my first body paragraph, I need to introduce my sources in a way that makes my reader very comfortable and familiar with them. So I'm going to start off with the beginning transition. So for example, let's let my reader know that I'm going to give them something specific to look at here. So for example, in the movie, and I'm going to quote here, so, "Oh brother, where," probably just the punctuation here, "where art thou?" All right, just like that. In the movie, "Oh brother, where art thou?" And I would say something like, and I got to talk about temptation. So in the movie, I have a scene with the sirens. So if you'll remember the scene in the movie, Pete drives up, or Pete Everett is driving, and then Pete hears the music while they're driving down the road. And Pete demands that the car be pulled over. Everett pulls over. Pete runs into the woods. Everett and Delmar follow. Pete sees these women who are bathing by the river and then becomes completely entranced by them, okay? So as a result of that, Pete wound up getting captured, or at least as far as Delmar was concerned, he got turned into a toad. So for example, in the movie, "Oh brother, where art thou?" Everett, I'm just going to talk about Everett mainly because he's my Odysseus. Everett and his men easily fall prey to the sirens. I'm putting that in quotes because it's kind of like ironic. The sirens by the creek, because they did not expect to be betrayed by them. All right, so for example, in the movie "Oh brother, where art thou?" Everett and his men easily fall prey to the sirens by the creek because they did not expect to be betrayed by them. Now, a couple things I want you to notice that I'm doing here. First of all, I am beginning with a transition. Anytime that I start an evidence, I want to begin with some sort of transition and let my reader know I'm going to give you something specific now. I'm going to give you evidence now that I'm going to use to make my point more clearly. So always begin with some sort of transition. For example, is a really obvious one. I'll be pulling another one later in the tutorial here when we get to the second E, but for example works fine. The second thing that I'm doing in here that I want you to know is that I'm giving you some context for the evidence. So first off, I'm telling you where I'm pulling it from. In this case, it's the movie "Oh brother, where art thou?" And now I'm telling you kind of what's going on. Everett and his men, and then I'm going to talk about what happened with the sirens. But I'm going to give you that context so that you, the reader, aren't completely blindsided by the evidence and where this is coming from. So again, just to give you an example, so this is kind of like an alternate example here. So let's just, we'll change the color to like, we'll change it to some sort of reddish color here. It's this example of bad writing, right? So bad writing example, I'll put it in brackets too. I wouldn't want to say something like, for example, the sirens, right? So first of all, that's not even a sentence, but secondly, it gives me no detail whatsoever about what I'm trying to say about the sirens. For example, the sirens doesn't work. Or if I say something like, if I just out of the blue, they were caught by the sirens because of Pete, all right? I haven't set it up in a way that makes it easy for my reader to understand what's going on. So I don't want to do that. I want to let my reader know exactly what's happening all the time throughout the essay. So basically, I'm done with my evidence because I've directly referenced a specific thing that happened in the movie, and now I'm going to talk about why it's important. So now this is the analysis, which is probably one of the more difficult parts of the KEATEAL, but honestly the thing that separates a good KEATEAL or a good body paragraph and a good essay from one that's just merely ordinary, mediocre, or even bad. The analysis needs to be comprehensive, and it needs to be well connected with clear thoughts and clear ideas. This is where the real writing happens. Everything else is just kind of a neat way to set things up so that everything's organized. It handles that organization strand, but it doesn't handle the good writing strand. So let's talk about the analysis. What's my first job in my analysis? Well, my first job is to talk about why this quote or why this piece of evidence proves my point about journeys and temptation and all that sort of stuff. Temptation is always present in life but can be avoided with proper preparation. So the thing I want to focus on here is how unprepared Everett and his men were for what happens. And I'm really focusing on this line right here where I say, because they did not expect to be betrayed. That is the thing that I'm going to be pulling from whenever I write this A1. So, oh brother, were art thou, Everett and his men easily fall prey to the sirens by the creek because they did not expect to be betrayed by them. So I'm going to go into and explain, and if I ever get stuck on what to do with an analysis, I can always just say, I can always use a phrase like this demonstrates, this shows, this indicates. And when I say this, I'm always pointing back to the evidence. So this always points back to the evidence. So this demonstrates, and so now what does it demonstrate? What am I getting from this piece of evidence? So let me look at it again. So this demonstrates, all right, that since Everett and his men had no clue about the danger these women posed. So this demonstrates that since Everett and his men had no clue about the danger these women posed, they were unable to avoid the danger by taking precautionary steps, something like that. So this demonstrates that since Everett and his men, and his men, look at this, I'm using IN right here. Shame on me, always read over your stuff. Everett and his men had no clue about the danger these women posed. They were unable to avoid, and see, I got danger twice here. I don't like that, it's so repetitive. So had no clue about the danger these women posed. They were unable to avoid, maybe I can just say avoid it. So they were unable to avoid it by taking precautionary steps. So maybe the reader would know it means the danger. Let's read it again to make sure. This demonstrates that since Everett and his men had no clue about the danger these women posed, they were unable to avoid it by taking precautionary steps. Okay, I think that's okay. So I've at least described how the evidence proves what I'm saying here, that temptation is present but can be avoided with proper preparation, right? They weren't prepared, therefore they fell to temptation. But I don't feel like I'm done yet.